The rain fell like silver needles across the city of Arvenstone, slicing through the streetlight glow as Seren Halden ran toward the bus stop. Her breath clouded in the cold, her thin jacket soaked through, her bag full of job applications now smudged and useless. It had been another hopeless day, the kind that made her wish she was anyone else. Then, a scream. Her head snapped toward the road. A sleek black limousine fishtailed across the wet asphalt, spinning wildly toward an elderly woman frozen in its path. Time fractured. The world tilted. Seren's pulse roared in her ears as something deep inside her broke loose. Light shimmered around her fingertips, gold, faint, trembling. The air bent. In one impossible instant, the car slammed into a barrier made of pure force, folding like paper against invisible strength. The old woman stumbled backward, untouched. Then the light died. The world snapped back into motion. Bystanders screamed, phones flashed, and Seren, heart pounding, turned and ran into the shadows. Her hands burned, her veins buzzing. She whispered under her breath, "No one can know. Not again." But someone had seen her. A driver from the opposite lane, frozen in disbelief. And the woman she'd saved, she wasn't just anyone. She was Margelle Ardent, mother of the richest man in the city.
Morning broke over the glass towers of Arvenstone like spilled gold. Inside the top floor of Ardent Global, Cassian Ardent stood before a wall of screens, watching silent footage of the crash. His jaw clenched as the image replayed, the car spinning out of control, then stopping midair. The metal folded, the impact vanished, as if an unseen hand had caught it. His mother, Margelle, was alive because of a mystery. The press called her savior the Phantom Girl. But Cassian wanted answers. "Find her," he ordered, his voice low but dangerous. "Whoever she is, she doesn't disappear in my city." Margelle sat quietly in a hospital suite, her frail hands trembling as she recalled the moment. "She had eyes like gold," she whispered to the nurse. "Not brown, not hazel, gold." But no one believed her. They said it was shock. Yet deep inside, she knew she had witnessed something extraordinary. That girl had saved her life, and maybe something far greater.
Across the city, Seren Halden wiped tables in the cafe where she worked, the morning rush blurring around her. Her mind was on the news, every screen, every voice asking the same question. Who was the girl who stopped the impossible? Her fingers twitched at every headline. Her secret was unraveling. And somewhere above, in an office of glass and power, her name was already being written into a destiny she never asked for. Night fell again, but the city didn't sleep. Somewhere between the glittering skyline and the quiet back streets, Seren felt the weight of being hunted. She didn't know by who, only that men in suits had begun showing up near her cafe, asking questions she couldn't afford to answer. Her friend Lyra whispered as they closed up, "They're looking for you, aren't they?" Seren forced a laugh, though her heart pounded. "I'm no one," she said softly. But she wasn't sure she believed it anymore.
Across town, Cassian Ardent sat in his car, engine off, watching the cafe from a distance. He didn't know why he'd come himself. CEOs didn't do surveillance. But something about this girl, it wasn't curiosity, it was instinct. He had seen her face on a security clip from the crash, rain-soaked hair, terrified eyes, and a burst of gold light that should not exist. "If she's out there," he murmured, "I'll find her." When Seren left through the back alley, she felt the strange pull in her chest, the same one she'd felt the night of the crash, a pulse of warmth. And for the first time, a figure stepped from the darkness, tall, cold-eyed, watching her. "You should have stayed hidden," he said. The last thing she saw was the glow of his ring before everything went black.
A cold light hummed above her when Seren Halden opened her eyes. The air smelled of metal and antiseptic. Her wrists were free, but the walls were white, sterile and soundproofed. Somewhere beyond the glass, shadows moved. 2 men in dark suits, and one who didn't move at all. Cassian Ardent. He stood with arms crossed, watching her like a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. "You stopped a 3-ton vehicle without touching it," he said at last, his tone even. "That doesn't happen by chance." Seren's throat tightened. "It wasn't what it looked like." Her voice shook. "I didn't—" "You did," he interrupted, eyes narrowing. "And I want to know how." She tried to stand, but her legs trembled. "If you think I'm some kind of weapon," she said softly, "you're wasting your time. I just didn't want her to die." There was silence. Then a voice from the corner, Margelle Ardent's. Weak but steady. "That's the girl." The door opened, and the old woman stepped inside, her eyes full of recognition. "You saved me," Margelle whispered, "and I owe you everything." Cassian froze. No one spoke. Seren looked from mother to son, confusion cutting through fear. She had no idea that moment had just changed the course of all their lives. Morning sunlight leaked through the glass walls of the Ardent estate, turning the marble floors gold. Seren sat awkwardly at the edge of a white leather chair, her fingers tracing the rim of a teacup she hadn't touched. Across from her sat Margelle Ardent, graceful even in recovery, her eyes warm but sharp. "You saved my life," Margelle began, "and no thank you could ever be enough, but I can at least give you a new one." Seren blinked, unsure she'd heard right. "A new life?" Margelle smiled gently. "You said you've been sleeping in your car, haven't you? My foundation needs someone with compassion. I want you to work for me. Live here if you like." The words hit Seren like a rush of wind, a home, a job, a way to start again. I can't accept that," she stammered. "You owe me nothing." Before Margelle could respond, Cassian entered, his presence like a sudden storm. "Mother, this isn't a good idea." His tone was firm, his gaze fixed on Seren. "We know nothing about her, not her past, not what she's capable of." Margelle turned to him, calm but commanding. "She's capable of saving your mother. That's all I need to know." Cassian's jaw clenched. He wanted to argue, but Margelle's authority left no room. "You're making a mistake," he muttered, turning to leave. Seren's heart pounded. She didn't understand why he seemed afraid of her, or why her mother's faith felt heavier than any debt she'd ever carried. Margelle reached across the table and took Seren's trembling hand. "You have power," she whispered. "Not just the kind that stops cars, the kind that changes fates. Don't hide it anymore." Seren didn't respond, but in that moment, something inside her shifted, a fragile hope flickering in the space where fear used to live. The Ardent mansion looked different at night. What had seemed like endless glass and beauty by day now shimmered with hidden reflections. Too many shadows for one house. Seren carried a small duffel bag as a maid led her to her new room on the 2nd floor. Every step echoed through hallways lined with portraits, men and women who shared the same piercing eyes as Cassian, watching her, judging her. Her room was bigger than her entire apartment used to be. She sat on the edge of the bed, unsure if she should touch anything. A knock came, soft but deliberate. Cassian. He stood at the door,
his usual calm replaced by quiet tension. "If you need anything," he said, eyes not meeting hers, "ask the staff. My mother trusts easily. I don't." Seren wanted to say something. Thank you, maybe, but the words died before leaving her lips. He nodded once and disappeared down the hall.
She wandered the house restlessly that night. The silence wasn't peaceful, it watched her. She found herself drawn to a locked door at the far end of the east wing. It looked older than the rest. Hand-carved wood, iron hinges, and strange symbols etched along its frame. She felt an odd pull toward it, her fingertips hovering just inches from the cold metal. "Don't touch that." The voice made her jump. It was Seren Vale, the family's head of security. Tall, quiet, with a face that never revealed anything. "That part of the house is off limits." Seren swallowed hard. "Why? What's in there?" Seren's eyes flickered, just for a moment. "History," he said flatly, "and history here is best left alone." Then he turned and vanished into the dark corridor. Seren stood frozen, her heart pounding. She didn't know what lay behind that door, but she could feel it breathing, like a secret waiting to wake. The following night, Seren couldn't sleep. The storm outside clawed at the windows, lightning flashing over the ardent mansion like camera flashes catching a guilty secret. She tossed under the silk sheets, but her mind replayed Aaron's warning. History here is best left alone. That only made her want to know more. By 2 a.m., the house had gone silent. No footsteps, no guards, only the low hum of the rain. Seren slipped out of bed, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and crept through the hallway. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the marble floor. She followed the corridor to the east wing, the one that seemed to exhale secrets. The locked door was there, waiting, like it knew she'd return. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a tiny pin from her hair. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the lock, until she heard the faintest click. The doors swung open with a long sigh. Inside was a dim corridor lined with dust-covered paintings, veiled furniture, and, strangest of all, the scent of jasmine, faint but familiar. She followed it to a small sitting room where a single lamp glowed softly, as if someone had just left. There, on a side table, sat a framed photograph. Seren picked it up and froze. The woman in the picture was her mother. Younger, smiling, but unmistakably her. Next to her stood Caelan's father. The caption read, "Levon Ardent and Maris Vale, 20 years of ardent industries." Seren's vision blurred. Her heart raced as she whispered, "Mom." A sudden voice cut through the air. "You shouldn't be here." Seren turned. It was Caelan. His face was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something between anger and disbelief. "Why do you have my mother's face?" he whispered. For a long moment, Seren and Caelan just stared at each other, the storm roaring outside, lightning strobing through the open door of the forbidden wing. Seren's voice trembled. "That's my mother. Why is she here, in your family's home?" Caelan stepped closer, his jaw tight. "Her name is Maris Vale," he said slowly. "She was my father's assistant before she disappeared." Seren's breath caught. "Disappeared?" Caelan's expression hardened. "She left suddenly when I was a child. No note, no trace. My father nearly destroyed the company looking for her." His voice dropped lower. "I thought she was dead." Seren clutched the photograph, her mind spinning. Maris Vale. She had grown up believing her mother was a simple florist, quiet and poor,
never mentioning the Ardents. Lies. All of it.
Callan's eyes flicked between her and the photograph, his disbelief turning sharp. "Who are you really, Seren?" His tone wasn't cruel, just lost. She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "I don't know anymore." A silence settled between them, the kind that carries both truth and danger. Then Eren appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Enough," he said coldly. "Callan, she shouldn't have seen that." Callan turned to him, anger sparking. "You knew?" Eren didn't answer. His silence said everything. "Your mother left because of your father, and because of what was built on lies." Seren's hands shook. "What lies?" Eren met her eyes, a shadow of pity in his gaze. The Ardents weren't just business leaders. They were experimenting, testing something that shouldn't have existed. A crash of thunder drowned the rest of his words. Callan stepped forward, gripping Eren's shoulder. "You will explain everything." But Eren's gaze went past him, to Seren, and his voice dropped to a warning whisper. "Your mother didn't just work for this family. She tried to destroy it." The mansion felt colder after Eren's words, like the walls themselves recoiled from the truth. Seren stood frozen in the old sitting room, clutching the photo of her mother. Destroy the Ardents? The storm outside had turned violent, rain thrashing against the glass. Callan's face had gone pale, a mix of confusion and denial twisting his features. "You're lying," he spat at Eren. "My father built this empire with his own hands. Eren's voice was steady, grave. "He built it with her mind. Maris Vale was the architect behind the company's greatest secret, a technology meant to amplify human intuition. But when she realized it could be used to control people, she tried to end it. Lavan Ardent didn't let her walk away." Seren's chest tightened as the pieces began to fit. The nightmares her mother used to have, the hushed phone calls, the fear that never left her eyes.
Callan staggered back, shaking his head. "My father would never—" He stopped. His voice cracked, like something inside him broke. "He would never hurt anyone." Eren's silence was an answer. Seren spoke softly. "My mother ran to protect me. That's why she changed her name. Why didn't she ever tell me who she was?" Callan turned toward her, eyes glistening. "Then why are you here now, Seren?" She hesitated. "Because I felt drawn to this place, like something was unfinished." Another thunderclap echoed, shaking the floor. Eren turned to the window. "It is unfinished," he said. "The original prototype still exists, hidden under this house. Lavan's last order before he died was to activate it, and only his bloodline can." Callan's face hardened. "And now both of our bloodlines are here," Seren whispered. Eren nodded slowly. "Exactly." The lights flickered, the hum of hidden machinery rising from beneath their feet. A door they hadn't noticed before, steel, sealed, humming faintly, began to glow with soft blue light. Seren's pulse raced. "What's happening?" Eren's answer was barely a whisper. "The house just recognized its heirs."
The floor trembled beneath their feet as the mansion came alive. Hidden gears whirred, the air charged with blue light that pulsed from the steel door. Seren and Callan exchanged a terrified glance as Eron backed away, his usually calm expression tight with dread. "Once it starts," he warned, "it can't be undone." The door split open with a metallic hiss, revealing a narrow staircase descending into a glowing chamber below. Without waiting, Seren stepped forward. "If my mother risked everything to stop this," she said, "then I have to see why." The chamber looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. At its center stood a glass sphere, suspended by silver cables, flickering with arcs of light that moved like veins. Inside it shimmered images, faces, memories, voices, her mother's laughter echoing faintly. Kalen stared, awe and horror warring in his eyes. "It's her consciousness," he breathed. "She uploaded part of herself to stop him." Seren's throat tightened. "And now, it's calling us." The machine pulsed harder, and suddenly a voice filled the chamber. "Seren, Kalen, the truth must end with you." Light exploded around them, wrapping Seren in warmth and sorrow. Her mother's voice trembled. "He used my work to control minds, but I encoded one final command. Only compassion can destroy it." Seren's tears fell freely. "Mom, how?" The voice grew faint. "Touch the core together. End what he began." She turned to Kalen. His eyes were glassy with guilt, but he nodded. "Let's finish this, for both of them." They reached out, their hands meeting over the sphere's surface. The light surged, blinding and pure.
The chamber erupted in a blast of white fire. Then silence. When the light faded, the machine was gone. The walls were still. Only a single photo remained on the floor, the same one of Maris Vale and Levin Ardent, now split perfectly down the middle. Seren leaned on Kalen's shoulder, weak but alive. "It's over," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "No," he said, voice low but certain. "It's beginning." Above them, dawn broke through the storm, casting golden light through the cracked ceiling. Weeks later, the mansion stood quiet, its power lines cut, its secrets buried. Seren walked through the empty halls one last time, her mother's necklace warm in her hand. She had inherited nothing but truth, and that was enough. Outside, Kalen waited by the gates, eyes softer now, free of shadows. "Where will you go?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Somewhere the past can't find me." Then she looked back once more at the house, whispering, "Thank you, Mom." As she stepped into the sunlight, the wind carried the faint scent of jasmine, a promise that her mother's love had never truly left.
The night was quiet, except for the distant hum of city traffic below the Vale Tower. Rain streaked down the glass like tears sliding off marble. Seren Halden stood in the vast living room, the pendant around her neck glowing faintly under the chandelier light. She hadn't taken it off since Margot gave it to her, a delicate silver locket etched with a crescent and flame. It wasn't just jewelry, it pulsed gently when she touched it, like it carried a heartbeat of its own. "You said this once belonged to your daughter," Seren whispered earlier, and Margot had smiled sadly. "Yes, to my little Evelyn. She would have been your age now." That answer echoed in Seren's chest. Would have been. Something about the pendant made her feel watched, connected, as if her own past whispered through it. Cassian Vale watched her from the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You've been quiet since the gala," he said. His tone was cool, but softer than before, like a man trying not to sound concerned. Seren turned to face him. "Your mother said she lost a daughter, but what if she wasn't lost? What if she was taken?" Cassian frowned. "That's impossible." Seren hesitated. "Is it?" The air between them thickened, electricity humming faintly, her magic responding to her fear. Cassian looked at her pendant again, something flickering in his eyes, not disbelief, but recognition. "That symbol," he said quietly. "It's the family seal, one my father had destroyed after the accident." Later that night, Seren couldn't sleep. The glow from the pendant pulsed faintly against her skin like it was alive. She walked out to the balcony, the city sprawled below in glittering silence. From there, she saw Cassian's reflection through the glass, still in his office, still awake, poring over something on his tablet. His eyes were sharp, but beneath that, exhaustion lived. She whispered into the night, "You build walls to protect yourself, but one day they'll bury you." The pendant flickered again, the same silver-blue shimmer that had appeared the night she saved Margot from the crash. Back then, she thought it was adrenaline. Now she wasn't so sure. Margot found her the next morning in the kitchen, stirring coffee she hadn't tasted. "You dreamed again," Margot said, her voice calm but knowing. Seren nodded. "I saw fire and a baby crying, and that pendant glowing brighter than it ever has." Margot's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the chain. "That pendant was crafted with a drop of my daughter's blood. When it responds, it's because it senses her spirit." Seren looked up sharply. "And if it reacts to me," Margot's eyes softened, filled with both fear and hope, "then perhaps fate isn't finished with us yet." Outside, a sleek black car rolled to a stop across the street. Inside sat Ilara Voss, dressed in steel-gray silk, her eyes cold with calculation. On her tablet were photos, Seren entering the Vale Tower, standing beside Cassian, smiling beside Margot at the gala. "She's in too deep," Ilara said quietly. "And if Cassian won't see the danger she brings, then I'll make him see." She closed the tablet with a click, her red lips curving into a smile that promised trouble. "Let's remind him what happens when he trusts the wrong woman."
The morning sun spilled into Seren's room like liquid gold, painting her walls in light. But the mirror on her dresser didn't reflect what it should. When she leaned closer to tie her hair, she froze. Her reflection blinked a second too late, just a fraction, but enough to make her blood run cold. "That's impossible," she whispered. She reached toward the glass, and for a moment her reflection did not follow. It simply stared back with eyes glowing faintly silver, the same hue as her pendant. She stumbled backward, gasping. The locket pulsed again, once, then dimmed as if sighing. Downstairs, she heard Margot's faint laughter and the hum of morning news. Everything was normal, except Seren's world no longer felt safe inside her skin. Something ancient was stirring, and it was inside her. Meanwhile, Cassian stood in his private office, staring at an old photograph he had unearthed the night before. His mother, years younger, held a child with bright blue eyes, a baby wearing a locket identical to Seren's. He had scanned every old record, every file of the accident that supposedly killed his sister. But something didn't add up. No remains, no verified report, only an insurance claim and a sealed hospital record from a remote town. "How could I not see it?" he muttered. His father's signature was on the papers, the same father who had vanished weeks after the crash. Cassian clenched his jaw. If Seren was connected to that child, it meant his entire past had been built on a lie. Seren walked into the garden, trying to calm her racing heart. The air smelled of jasmine and wet stone after last night's rain. She found Margot there, trimming roses. "You're awake early," she said softly without turning. Seren hesitated. "Do you ever feel like your reflection isn't really you?" Margot chuckled at first, then saw the fear in her eyes. "What did you see?" Seren hesitated, voice trembling. "She looked back at me, but it wasn't me." Margot's hand tightened around her shears. "There's something I never told Cassian. The night of the accident, the car didn't explode because of fire. It was light. Blinding light." Seren stared at her. "You mean magic?" Margot's lips pressed together. "I mean something older than magic. Something my husband tried to destroy."
Far across town, Ilara Voss stood before her vanity, her own reflection calm and perfect. She had spent years building the image of the poised socialite, the CEO's trusted partner, the one always in control. But now her hands shook with jealousy. "She's everywhere," she hissed, scrolling through the news. Seren's photo, radiant beside Cassian and his mother. The media already calls her the miracle girl. Her assistant hovered nervously. "Should I release the footage?" Ilara turned, eyes sharp. "Not yet. Let them adore her a little longer. The higher they lift her, the harder she'll fall." She smiled coldly, her reflection smiling back, a perfect, poisonous twin.
That night, Seren returned to her room. The mirror seemed harmless again, only reflecting her candle-lit silhouette. But when she turned to close the window, a whisper came from the glass, faint, female, and pleading. "Find me." The candle flickered violently, plunging the room into shadow. The locket around her neck burned hot against her skin. Seren gasped and dropped to her knees, clutching it. The whisper now louder, trembling with sorrow. "They hid me, sister. They hid the truth." And then silence. Seren's eyes widened. She could hear her own heartbeat, wild and terrified. But beneath it was another, softer, weaker, but unmistakably hers.
Cassian Vale stood alone in the archives of his family's estate, surrounded by dust and silence. The old leather boxes smelled of smoke and age, relics of a time he'd been told to forget. He opened a locked chest labeled Holden. Inside lay faded hospital bracelets, burned documents, and one photo. His father standing beside a doctor cradling two newborns. Twins! Cassian's pulse quickened. His mother had only ever spoken of one baby, the girl lost in the accident. But this photo told another story. "Twins," he whispered. One baby wore a silver locket with a crescent insignia, the same one Seren wore now. The other had nothing but a hospital tag, Seren Halden Vale. His father had hidden the second child's existence. "Why?" Cassian muttered, his voice shaking. He knew now. Seren wasn't just a savior. She was blood. Meanwhile, Seren sat on her bed, tracing her finger along the locket. Her reflection no longer frightened her. Instead, it looked almost sad. The whispers had returned, softer now, like a lullaby. "Don't be afraid of what you are." The words filled her with both dread and wonder. The pendant shimmered faintly, revealing engravings she'd never noticed before. A symbol of intertwined moons and a single flame at their center. When she touched it, the air rippled like water. For a heartbeat, she saw another world, a forest of blue fire, and a woman who looked like just her, bound in chains of light. Then it vanished. Seren gasped, falling backward. "Who are you?" she whispered. The mirror flickered, and a single tear rolled down its surface.
Margot entered quietly, her face pale but resolute. "Seren," she said, holding an old, cracked envelope. "This came to me years ago, the night your mother died." Seren froze. "My mother?" Margot nodded. "Her name was Lyra Halden Vale. She was my sister-in-law." Seren's throat tightened. "You mean—" "Yes," Margot whispered, eyes glassy. "You were born here, in this house. My husband sent you away after the accident. He feared what your power could become." She pressed the letter into Seren's hand. "He thought he was protecting us, but he was hiding his shame." Seren tore it open. The handwriting was delicate, trembling. "If they ever find her, tell her the moon will remember her name." Across the city, Ilara met with a man in a black suit, one of Cassian's former private investigators. "You're sure about this?" she asked. He nodded grimly. "Seren Halden is the missing twin. The Vale fortune technically belongs to her, too." Ilara leaned back, lips curling.
So she's not just a stray girl with a gift, she's a threat. The man hesitated. Cassian doesn't know yet. Elara smirked. Then he'll learn it from me in front of everyone. Her reflection in the limo window shimmered strangely for a moment, like it didn't quite match her movements. She blinked, unsettled. What the? But then the image smiled at her on its own. The same silver eyes that haunted Seren stared back.
That night, Cassian arrived at Seren's door, face pale, eyes burning with disbelief. He held up the photograph of the twins. "Seren?" he said quietly. "I think I know who you are." Her fingers trembled as she held out her mother's letter. "I think I do too." The air between them thickened. Grief, awe, recognition, and something unspoken that neither dared name. "We were never strangers," she whispered. Cassian swallowed hard. "No, we were family, torn apart by someone who feared what you could become." Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Seren's pendant began to glow again, bright enough to cast their shadows on the wall, two outlines merging into one.
The Vale Foundation Gala glittered beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen constellations. Journalists, investors, and heirs swirled through the ballroom, dressed in silk and smiles. Cassian stood at the top of the staircase, every inch the composed CEO, but inside, he was trembling. He could still hear Seren's voice echoing in his mind. We were never strangers. He'd barely slept since that night, his thoughts looping around the photo of the twins and his father's lies. When Seren entered, the crowd turned. She wore a modest silver gown, her pendant catching the light like moonfire. Whispers followed her, the mystery girl who'd saved Margot Vale. Cassian met her eyes across the room, and for a fleeting moment, everything stilled, until Elara appeared. She moved through the crowd like perfume, sweet and dangerous. "Cassian," she purred, "you might want to prepare yourself. The truth's about to burn brighter than your chandelier." As Cassian stepped forward to confront her, Elara took the microphone from the stage. Cameras swiveled. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice dripping honey, "we celebrate family tonight. But what is family without truth?" The crowd murmured. "Some of us have spent years believing in legacies built on lies." Her gaze locked on Seren. "And some of us aren't what we pretend to be." Seren froze. Cassian's stomach nodded. "Stop this," he hissed. But Elara smiled wider. "Why, Cassian? Don't you want to know who your real sister is?" Gasps rippled through the audience. Elara lifted a photo, the same baby picture Cassian had found in the archives. "Seren Halden is not just some orphan. She's a Vale, the lost twin your father hid, because she was born different." Chaos erupted. Reporters shouted, flashbulbs exploded, and Margot Vale collapsed into her chair, trembling. Seren's heart pounded as every eye in the room turned on her. "A witch," someone whispered. "A fraud," another hissed. The pendant around her neck flared with blinding light, responding to her fear. "Enough!" she cried, her voice trembling with energy. The chandeliers shook, glass splintered, people screamed. Cassian rushed toward her, shielding her from the falling shards. "Seren, listen to me," he shouted. "You have to control it." But the storm inside her had been waiting years to escape. "I didn't ask for this," she sobbed. Her magic burst outward, wind, fire, and pure emotion, until a wave of power rippled through the ballroom, blowing the banners apart. Then, silence. Elara stumbled back, her makeup smeared, fury twisting her face. "You see," she screamed, "she's dangerous. That's why your father locked her away." Cassian turned to her, eyes like steel.
My father destroyed this family with his lies. Seren is the only one telling the truth. He turned back to Seren, who stood amid the chaos, trembling and broken. You're not a curse. You're what's left of our family. Seren's pendant dimmed, her breathing slowing. The fire faded into soft light. Then why does it feel like I've lost everything? She asked. Cassian reached out, pulling her close. You haven't. You've just found where you truly belong. Around them, people watched, silent, stunned. The Vale Empire's perfect image had cracked open, and inside it burned something far more human, truth. But Ilara wasn't done. Her voice cut through the air like a knife. You think this is over? Your father didn't just hide her, he feared her. Because the moment her magic awakened, it would expose everything he stole. She held up a flash drive. All the records, all the evidence. The Vale fortune isn't yours, Cassian. It's hers. Security lunged, but Ilara tossed the drive into the air and it landed in Seren's hand. For a moment, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Seren looked at it, then at Cassian, and whispered, Then let's set them all free.
The city was still smoldering with whispers after the gala. By dawn, every news outlet carried Seren's name, the lost Vale twin, the magic girl who changed everything. In the quiet of Margot's glass-walled conservatory, sunlight filtered through hanging orchids, softening the ruin of the night before. Seren stood barefoot on the marble floor, clutching the flash drive Ilara had thrown her way. It felt heavy, almost alive. She knew what it contained, decades of stolen projects, false patents, money laundered under innocent names. Her father's empire was built on deceit. You could erase them all, Margot whispered from her chair, with one click. Seren turned, tears lining her lashes. And become what he was? Margot reached out, frail fingers trembling. No, you could end what he was. Cassian entered quietly, a faint bruise still shadowing his jaw. The board's already calling for my resignation. They think I can't lead with you in my life. Seren met his eyes. Then maybe it's time someone else did. They stood together before the massive computer screen in Cassian's private office. Files blinked open like ghosts, offshore accounts, hidden patents, secret deals that made Vale Industries untouchable. Seren's hand hovered over the keyboard. Once this goes out, Cassian, Khan warned, there's no taking it back. Every investor, every partner, every politician, they'll come after us. Seren nodded slowly. Let them. They can't destroy truth. She clicked upload. The progress bar crawled upward, 10%, 40%, 72%. As it reached 100%, a strange warmth pulsed through the pendant at her neck. The lights flickered. Screens across the city, phones, billboards, news feeds, all went black, then displayed one message. The truth belongs to everyone. Seren exhaled shakily. It was done. For the first time in years, silence felt clean. Hours later, the Vale estate was surrounded by reporters. Margot, now recovering, watched from the balcony as the crowd chanted Seren's name. Cassian turned to his sister, pride softening his voice. You didn't just free the company, he said. You freed us. Seren smiled faintly. Freedom doesn't erase the scars. She looked at the pendant, now dull and cracked from the surge. But maybe it makes them worth it. A soft wind blew through the open windows, carrying the scent of wet earth and jasmine. In the distance, the first rays of dawn brushed the skyline, fragile, golden, and real. Cassian reached for her shoulder. So what now? She glanced toward the horizon.
Now, we rebuild, not as Vales, as ourselves. Later that morning, Seren returned to the very road where everything began, where she'd once knelt in shattered glass beside an old woman, saving her life. The spot still bore the faint scorch of burned rubber and memory. She knelt again, fingertips brushing the pavement. "If I hadn't stopped that car," she whispered, "I'd still be waiting for my life to start." Margot appeared beside her, bundled in a shawl. "Or maybe," she said gently, "your life started when you chose kindness." Seren smiled. "And you?" "I chose faith," Margot replied, her eyes glistening. "In you." That night, Seren stood on her apartment rooftop, overlooking the city. The same city that once ignored her, now glowing beneath her quiet justice. Cassian's voice echoed faintly through her phone. "They're already rebuilding under your plan. A foundation for people like you, gifted, unseen, forgotten." Seren looked up at the stars, tears welling. "Tell them they're not alone anymore." The pendant flickered once, like a heartbeat, then dimmed for good. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time, her magic felt still, not something to hide, not something to prove, but something that finally belonged to her. And as the city exhaled beneath the morning light, one truth remained unshakable. She hadn't just saved a life that day, she'd saved her own. The city didn't sleep that night. Neon lights reflected off shattered glass, camera drones buzzed like hornets above the Halden Tower, and Seren stood at the rooftop edge, watching her world burn below. The truth she unleashed had torn the veil off Cassian's empire. Every screen glowed with her face, half angel, half traitor. Her pulse throbbed like thunder in her veins. Cassian stood behind her, his voice tight. "They think you're the villain now." Seren didn't turn. "Maybe I am." The wind tangled her hair, carrying smoke from the protests below. Her magic rippled beneath her skin, unsteady, hungry. Cassian reached out, steadying her wrist. "You didn't destroy us, you freed us." But Seren's eyes flickered gold. "Then why does it feel like I've cursed everything I touched?" By morning, news vans clogged the streets. Margot's name trended worldwide. The CEO's mother, saved by a girl with impossible power. Strangers gathered outside the hospital where she rested, holding signs, "Witch or hero?" Seren slipped in through a side entrance, hood pulled low. Margot's room smelled of lavender and antiseptic. The old woman's voice was frail but calm. "They're afraid of what they don't understand." Seren knelt beside her, her magic dimming under grief. "They should be." Margot smiled weakly. "Don't let fear rewrite your story, child. You wrote it with your heart. Now finish it with grace." That night, Cassian found Seren in the underground garage, surrounded by old research files and broken tech. "You're building something again," he said. "Not building," she murmured, sparks of blue fire dancing on her palms. "Restoring." He studied her with quiet awe. "You think the world deserves saving after what they're doing to you?" Seren glanced up, tears glinting like starlight. "It's not about deserving. It's about hope." Cassian exhaled softly. "Then I'll stand with you, no matter what comes." The reflection didn't move with her. It breathed. Seren froze, heart pounding, as her mirrored self stepped forward, eyes glowing like twin suns. "You can't run from me anymore," it whispered, voice fractured like static. Cassian reached for her, but the lights in the garage burst one by one, leaving them in the pulse of Seren's golden glow. The reflection, the other Seren, smiled, cruel and knowing. "You sealed me away when you were a child. Every time you healed, every time you fought, you used me." Seren stumbled back. "You're not real."
I'm everything you denied. Your fear, your power, your anger. The air crackled. Cassian moved between them, but the mirror Seren waved her hand and he was thrown across the room like a rag doll. Sparks flew. "Stay out of this, mortal," it hissed. "This is between us." Seren's knees hit the cold floor, her pulse sinking with the creature's. Every nerve screamed. She remembered flashes, the night her parents disappeared, the blinding light, the voice in her head whispering, "Run." The reflection stepped closer, its tones softening. "They tried to control us, but we could control them. You were born from more than fate, Seren Halden. You were created to cleanse the corruption in this world." Seren's voice trembled. "By burning it down?" The reflection tilted its head. "Sometimes fire is mercy." Margot's voice echoed faintly through Seren's memory. "Finish it with grace." And suddenly, she understood. Standing, Seren faced the reflection squarely. "You were born of pain," she said, her palms lighting up with golden flame. "But I was born of choice." The mirror Seren snarled. "You'll destroy yourself." Seren stepped forward, merging light and shadow in her hands. "Then I'll do it with purpose." The two collided. The garage erupted with light so bright it cracked the floor. Glass shattered outward, and for a moment there were two silhouettes locked in combat, one of rage, one of peace. Then silence. When the light faded, only one Seren remained. Breathing hard, her hands trembling, the reflection gone. Cassian staggered to her side, voice hoarse. "Are you... you?" Seren turned to him, her eyes now calm and human again. "I am now." But in the mirror behind her, for a single blink, her reflection smiled.
Rain fell in torrents that night, drumming against the steel skeletons of Vale City's skyline. The storm was unnatural, each bolt of lightning tracing symbols across the clouds, glowing the same golden hue as Seren's power. Cassian drove in silence, eyes darting to her every few seconds. She sat beside him, soaked, hair clinging to her cheek, staring blankly out the window. "It's not over," she said, softly. "When I fought her, I felt something else, something beneath the city." Cassian's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" Seren turned to him, eyes distant. She wasn't lying. "There's a system under the Vale Foundation, machines pulsing with the same energy as me. My parents built it. To control magic or to erase it." They stopped at the edge of the old district, where forgotten rail tunnels disappeared beneath layers of steel gates. Seren pushed them open with a flick of her hand, locks melting under invisible heat. The tunnels stretched downward, lined with cables and runes. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became, like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. "This was never about charity or innovation," Cassian muttered, flashlight sweeping across rows of dormant pods. "Your parents worked for my grandfather. He wanted to merge human instinct with magic. You were their test." Seren's steps altered. "So I was never a miracle, just a project." Her voice cracked. Cassian turned, gently cupping her face. "No, you became more than they ever imagined." Suddenly, the tunnel lights flickered on by themselves. The air thickened with static. Every pod lit up, revealing shadowy outlines, hundreds of sleeping figures suspended in liquid gold. Seren stepped closer, horror dawning on her. "They're alive," she whispered. "Copies. Failed versions." Cassian backed away, voice shaking. "Seren, we need to go." But the ground trembled beneath them, the machinery roaring to life. A mechanical voice echoed through the corridor. "Program Halden initiated." The pods began to open, one after another, releasing figures with her face, her voice, her power. Seren's breath caught. "They're not copies," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They're my memories, given bodies." The storm outside roared louder, as if the sky itself had heard the awakening below. The tunnels quaked as the storm above mirrored the chaos below. Sparks rained from broken cables while the air pulsed with energy, each heartbeat of the earth syncing with Seren's. Cassian dragged her back, but she stood rooted, watching the other versions of herself step from their pods, eyes glowing the same golden light. Some wept, others screamed. One stepped forward, her face eerily calm. "You were the chosen one," she said, voice identical to Seren's but colder. "You survived because you obeyed. But we remember everything you forgot." Seren's magic rippled through the chamber, flickering like lightning across wet metal. "I didn't survive because I obeyed. I survived because I refused to die." The copies began to move, some crawling, some floating, drawn to her energy like moths to flame. Cassian aimed his flashlight and froze. Their shadows were merging, overlapping, forming a single colossal silhouette on the wall. "Seren," he shouted, "they're fusing!" She raised her hands, eyes burning bright, and a wall of light exploded between them. "Stay behind me," she yelled. The clones' voices twisted together, creating a single, haunting cry. "We are what you left behind." The air thickened, humming with unbearable force. Seren screamed as golden threads burst from her skin, wrapping around her doubles, pulling their essence back into her. One by one, they dissolved into dust and light, vanishing with anguished whispers. When the last one disappeared, Seren fell to her knees. The tunnel fell silent, except for the hum of dying machines. Cassian rushed to her side. "You're bleeding," he said, his voice trembling. "No," she murmured, looking at the faint light glowing through her veins. "It's not blood. It's them." Her body trembled as a surge of power raced through her chest, her magic now infinite, unstable, alive. "Cassian," she whispered, eyes wide with realization. "If I don't control this, the whole city will burn." He met her gaze, jaw set. "Then we'll learn to control it, together."
The rain had stopped. Vale City was eerily silent, streets glistening under shattered streetlights, air still humming with leftover static. Cassian half-carried Seren out of the tunnels, his shirt stained with her blood and gold. She could barely stand, her eyes dimming as the last of her power flickered uncontrollably. "Cassian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's spreading. My power's reaching the grid." Across the city, every light blinked at once, buildings glowing faintly gold, as if the entire city had become part of her heartbeat. Cassian looked up at the skyline, horror dawning. "You're linked to it all," he said. "You'll burn yourself out." Seren smiled weakly. "Then let me choose what burns." He tried to stop her, but she stepped forward, barefoot, onto the flooded street. Her reflection shimmered beneath her as light began spiraling from her palms, rising like fireflies. "They made me to be a weapon," she said softly, her hair glowing like sunlight underwater. "But I'll end as a warning." Cassian's voice cracked. "Seren, please, don't!" She turned, eyes soft, glowing brighter than the storm that once tried to consume her. "You once told me I was more than what they built. Let me prove it." Then she pressed her hands to the ground. The light erupted, a dome of gold expanding from her body, racing across Vale City, disarming every weapon, disabling every corrupted machine her parents and his grandfather had built. The underground network collapsed, the air finally stilling. Cassian ran to her as the light faded, catching her as she fell. "Seren, look at me!" he shouted, shaking her gently. Her eyes fluttered open, soft and human again. "Did it stop?" she whispered. "It did," he said, voice breaking. "You saved them all." A faint smile touched her lips. "Then maybe I was magic for a reason." She went limp in his arms as the dawn broke over Vale City. Months later, a statue stood where she'd made her final stand, etched with her last words, "Let light be a choice, not a curse." And every year when lightning touched the city's heart, people swore they saw her reflection in the sky, smiling, watching, reminding them that power means nothing without compassion.